You reach a certain age and start to believe you've seen it all. You've watched communities blossom and wither, raised families, endured committee meetings that stretch into eternity, and figure out the delicate art of choosing your battles. With time, you learn to guard your peace like a fortress. And I thought I had finally found mine, until flashing red and blue lights lit my backyard like a crime scene, and my azaleas trembled in the crosshairs of chaos I never saw coming. Officer Thompson stood by my pool gate, notepad in hand, wearing the neutral expression a man dropped into the middle of someone else's disaster. Beside him stood a soaked teenager, dripping onto my patio stone, finger aimed squarely at me like I was a villain out of some badly written soap opera. His voice trembled in that too polished, too practiced way that only made it more theatrical. He said I'd locked him out illegally, said I threatened him, but I've lived long enough to know when I'm looking at a performance, not a plea. And from the subtle twitch at the corner of Officer Thompson's mouth, I knew he'd already spotted the cracks in the boy's story. What neither of them knew yet was that I had the truth captured, frame by frame. Let me take you back a few weeks. My name's David, and I've lived in the Maple Ridge subdivision for 5 years now, long enough to remember when neighbors showed up with baked goods instead of complaints. The neighborhood had been a slice of calm, a pocket of peace in a world that often forgets how to be kind. That peace lasted exactly until the HOA elections rolled around, and a familiar name suddenly sat atop the list. Karen Pedoin, my next-door neighbor. The moment she was elected president, it was like she'd been anointed the sovereign ruler of suburbia. Every morning, she paraded through the neighborhood like a commander on patrol, clutching her clipboard like it was encrusted with diamonds. She eyeballed lawns, fences, flower beds, searching for violations like a predator scans for prey. I've encountered people like her before, the kind who treat power like a toy and play until it breaks. My backyard had always been my escape, a sanctuary. After long days at the accounting firm, I'd come home, slip into the pool, and let the stillness wash away the world. It was sacred ground. The neighbors before her respected that boundary. But Karen, she saw an opportunity. It started small, innocent compliments about how beautiful the pool was, how serene. Then came the more pointed comments. Wouldn't it be nice if others could enjoy it too? I smiled and nodded, thinking it was just idle talk, until I came home one afternoon and found the gate flung open. My first thought was that I'd forgotten to latch it, but a feeling in my gut told me to check the footage, because in this world, if you value your peace, you install cameras. There they were, Karen's teenage son, Tyler, and 3 of his friends, having the time of their lives. Splashing, yelling, drinks in hand. Wet towels tossed across my patio chairs. Empty cans floating lazily in the shallow end. It looked less like a backyard and more like the aftermath of a low-budget party scene. Trying to keep things civil, I went next door. Karen opened the door with that signature tight-lipped smile, the kind that barely passes for polite. I calmly explained what I'd seen, even showed her the images on my phone. She barely glanced at them. Her dismissal was swift in practice. Then she dropped a line that truly made me question reality. As HOA president, she said, I have shared access rights to all exterior amenities in the neighborhood, including your pool. I blinked hard. Did she truly believe that her position gave her dominion over my backyard? I tried, with as much grace as I could muster, to clarify the difference between community spaces and private property. Her smile widened, like I'd just proven her point, and she said, You really ought to read the bylaws before shutting the door. So I did. That night, I brewed a fresh cup of coffee, sat down with the HOA binder, and read every single page. Highlighter in hand, I combed through the fine print. Article 7 laid it out in bold. Pools, patios, backyards. These are the sole property of individual homeowners. No ambiguity, no interpretation, just law, plain and clear. The next morning, I installed a keypad lock on the gate, a sturdy one. While I was at it, I posted a new sign, private property, and trespassing. Violators will be prosecuted. Karen wanted rules. I'd show her how they worked. For a few days, it was quiet. Then came Tuesday. I pulled into my driveway earlier than usual, head pounding from a rough day at work. Before I even turned off the ignition, I heard shouting, angry voices. I moved fast, straight through the house to the backyard. And there he was, Tyler, mid-climb, one leg slung over my fence like he was auditioning for a rodeo, his face flushed with indignation. He didn't even pretend to be innocent. "You can't lock me out. My mom said I can swim here whenever I want." I kept my voice calm, measured, told him to get down and leave. That's when he threw out the real punch, accused me of discrimination, said I was breaking HOA policy. I stared at him, stunned by the audacity. Then I pulled out my phone, told him he had 10 seconds to leave, or I'd call the cops. He glared, muttered something under his breath, and hopped back over the fence. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. 20 minutes later, sirens pierced the calm. I looked out the window and saw 2 cruisers parked along the curb. Officers approached my door. I met them halfway, heart racing. "Officer Thompson," one of them said, "we received a 911 call from a minor. He claims you threatened and unlawfully detained him." I was stunned. The kid had actually called the police. I welcomed him inside, calm, unflinching. I showed them everything. Footage, photos, the bylaws, the new lock, the posted sign. Officer Thompson flipped through it all with a keen eye and a furrowed brow. He was seeing the truth, piece by piece. Then came the screech. Karen burst through my front door like a banshee on roller skates, shouting, accusing, hurling legal jargon like confetti. She demanded answers, claimed I'd endangered her son. Officer Thompson didn't even flinch. He calmly laid it all out. Tyler had trespassed, the 911 call was false, and Karen was dangerously close to crossing a legal line. They called Tyler over. Officer Thompson spoke to him plainly, firmly, like a father who'd had enough. Tyler's defiance crumbled in an instant. He stammered out apologies like a dam giving way. Then came the question, "Do you want to press charges?" I looked at Tyler, really looked at him. Just a kid, scared, caught up in something too big for him. I shook my head, said I'd settle for a formal warning this time, but no mercy if it happened again. Everything was documented, filed, and Officer Thompson made it clear this wasn't a slap on the wrist. This was the warning shot. Karen tried to argue, but Thompson shut her down cold, reminded her that HOA status didn't mean immunity. Then, for good measure, he reminded her that filing a false emergency report could cost her up to $5,000, or worse. 3 weeks later, a letter showed up in my mailbox from Tyler. Handwritten, stiff, awkward, probably dictated with Karen hovering behind him. But still, it was an apology. He promised not to trespass again. Karen, on the other hand, was just getting started. She filed a complaint with the HOA board, accused me of hostility, demanded that board members be given access to all exterior resources, and tried to fine me for installing the lock without prior approval. The next HOA meeting was packed. Standing room only. I came armed with documents, images, the police report, everything. But I didn't even need them. The board was already done with her. One member asked her to show where in the bylaws it said she could use someone else's pool. She couldn't. Another brought up how she had tried to use her HOA title to get a store discount. And then the floodgates opened. One neighbor said she tried to demand a key to their shed. Another revealed she ordered them to remove their flower bed because it clashed with the visual identity of the street. Complaint after complaint poured out. George Harrison, the treasurer, finally stood and said what everyone else was thinking. He made a motion, a vote of no confidence. It passed, 7-1. Karen was removed on the spot. She didn't go quietly, knocked over a water pitcher, screamed about jealousy, and stormed out in a cloud of wounded pride. But the story didn't end there. The board launched an audit. What they found: over $8,000 in personal expenses charged to the HOA credit card. Karen had labeled them as community development. The board voted to press charges. 2 weeks later, the police came knocking again, this time with a warrant. Karen was arrested for felony embezzlement. As they led her to the cruiser in cuffs, she turned, locked eyes with me, and screamed that it was all my fault. I stood in the window, tea in hand, watching the lights reflect off the azaleas. And I smiled, because here's what age teaches you. People may think they're above consequence, but truth has all the time in the world, and it always comes home.